Let's begin with a structural overview. Welcome to another lecture. I am Professor Alexei, and today we examine the career arc of Flavio Cobolli, an Italian professional tennis player whose recent ascent, if you will, is a case study in stepwise development, resilience, and opportunity. With me is Priyanka, whose questions routinely keep us honest and, to some extent, curious in the most productive way.
Hi everyone. I'm Priyanka. I'm excited to learn about Cobolli today and maybe ask a few simple questions that, lead us into the details.
Before we get to the complexities, let us define the terrain. Flavio Cobolli, born May 2002 in Florence and raised near Rome, is primarily a singles specialist. His career progression resembles a mountaineering itinerary, with base camps at junior doubles success, acclimatization on the Challenger Tour, and then summiting through ATP 250 and 500 events to a Grand Slam final. We observe the following institutional landmarks. The ATP Tour is the principal circuit, stratified into ATP 250, 500, and Masters 1000 events. The ATP Challenger Tour, naturally, serves as the developmental rung below, where consistent results convert to ranking capital. The Grand Slams are the four major peaks in Melbourne, Paris, London, and New York, and the Davis Cup represents national team competition, where individual gamesmanship must fit into collective strategy. In this context, Cobolli's dossier touches all of these layers, and arguably illustrates how competence transfers across surfaces and formats over time.
I think that helps. Can we say his mountain started with junior results, then climbed through challengers, and finally into ATP finals and the French Open run? Does that sequence really hold up when we look closely?
Clearly. On the junior circuit, he posted a strong singles record and, crucially, won the 2020 French Open boys doubles title with Dominic Stricker. That early proficiency at Roland Garros, if you will, foreshadowed an eventual clay identity. On the Challenger Tour, he converted to titles, such as Zadar 2022, which catalyzed entry into higher draws. The ATP Tour acclimatization became visible in 2024, with quarterfinals at Montpellier and Delray Beach, a first Masters third round in Madrid, and a first ATP final in Washington. Then, to elaborate, the breakthrough phase accelerated with his first ATP title at Bucharest in April 2025, an ATP 500 title at Hamburg that summer. Subsequently, he sustained improvements on hard courts, culminating in Acapulco in March 2026, before the French Open final later that spring. Moving forward, why does a story like this matter? In sports development, we see how athletes such as Cobolli expand the perceived frontier of a nation's depth. Italy's present cohort has notable breadth, and his rise from outside the top 60 in early 2024 to the top 10 by June 2026 indicates both pipeline health and the practical value of persistence. It's important to understand that careers are seldom linear. Injuries and slumps, in fact, are frequent perturbations. Cobolli's rebound after a late 2024 shoulder interruption exemplifies how recovery, scheduling, and confidence can be recalibrated to produce superior outcomes.
It makes me wonder about role models for younger players in Italy. Seeing someone recover from setbacks must be reassuring, right?
Youngest indeed. Two anchor points are straightforward. Cobolli reached the 2026 French Open final, pushing Alexander Zverev to a fifth set, and he entered the ATP Top 10 in June 2026. The chronological scaffold is equally instructive. A first ATP title in Bucharest in April 2025, a Hamburg 500 title in July 2025, a Wimbledon quarterfinal the same month, then an Acapulco 500 title on hard courts in March 2026, and the Roland Garros run in May and June 2026, after which he debuted at world number 10. Woven through this were high-value wins over top 10 opponents, including Zverev, Medvedev, and Auger-Aliassime in pressure contexts.
So, yeah, moving on. Maybe a quick note on his background? Does family context matter here?
It is worth noting that Cobolli's father, Stefano, competed professionally, and the household supported early exposure to training and travel. Growing up in Subiaco near Rome gave him access to federation pathways. He also cites Novak Djokovic as an idol, which, mathematically, sets a high benchmarking function for return quality and defensive elasticity. Such aspirational targeting can shape practice priorities over many seasons. Speaking of analytics, a brief personal aside. I follow tennis data sets with the same enthusiasm I reserve for endgame studies in chess. Cobolli's statistical progression, particularly the shift from clay primacy to genuine hardcourt threat by early 2026, mirrors broader trends in athlete development where surface-specific strengths become transportable with incremental gains in serve patterns, return depth, and rally tolerance. In simpler terms, small technical optimizations aggregate into large ranking changes. This logically leads us to three questions. First, historically, what precipitated Cobolli's breakthrough on the ATP Tour? Second, counterfactually, how might his trajectory differ had he avoided the 2024 shoulder injury? Third, prospectively, what are the plausible ceilings and headwinds for him in the next competitive cycle? Big question one, the historical driver set. We can infer that his pathway followed a classic arc: junior credibility, challenger conversion, then ATP consolidation accelerated by catalytic weeks. Key inflection points include Zadar 2022 on the challenger side, a first ATP quarterfinal in Munich 2023, a first Masters third round in Madrid 2024, then Washington 2024, which, despite a final loss, proved he could navigate late rounds at tour level. The immediate post-injury period was uneven in early 2025. However, Bucharest 2025 recalibrated confidence, and Hamburg 2025 delivered a top 500 tier confirmation, with a straight sets win over Andrei Rublev. By early 2026, he translated those gains to hard courts with the Acapulco 500 title over Francis Tiafoe. Meanwhile, the accumulation of top 10 wins, including over Zverev and Medvedev, demonstrated adaptability against divergent styles. The Roland Garros 2026 run then synthesized clay pedigree with improved point construction under 5-set pressure, defeating Felix Auger-Aliassime in the quarterfinals, receiving a walkover in the semifinal, and pushing a seasoned finalist to 5 in the final, marked the completion of a multi-year climb.
I'm curious about the family piece you mentioned. Do we have evidence that support from parents and siblings really translates into competitive stability on tour? Or is that just a nice narrative we repeat?
In this context, we see both anecdotal and empirical strands. Cobolli credits his parents, Stefano and Francesca, and his brother Guglielmo with creating a stable environment, which in turn normalizes the stress of travel and competition. The literature on talent development suggests that early logistical support, calm debriefing after losses, and continuity in coaching inputs reduce volatility in performance. That is to say, while talent is non-negotiable, the surrounding infrastructure often determines the slope of improvement rather than merely the ceiling. Big question 2. A counterfactual regarding the 2024 shoulder injury. If we remove the Vienna interruption, a plausible scenario is that his late 2024 indoor results might have nudged him into a higher 2025 seeding band earlier, altering draw difficulty and perhaps advancing the timing of his first title. However, we must add error bars. Sometimes injuries function as strategic resets. Athletes return with refined scheduling, strength work, and arguably clearer tactical identities. In Cobolli's case, the early 2025 slump gave way to Bucharest, which became a confidence unlock, followed by Hamburg and Wimbledon quarterfinals. Without the injury, the climb might have begun sooner. With it, the climb was steeper but still successful.
Can we maybe now look at the psychology? How do players cope in that gap between injury and form? Like, what mechanisms are actually useful rather than just motivational slogans?
Fundamentally, the evidence points to structured rehab routines, graded exposure to match loads, and controlled feedback loops that emphasize process metrics over short-term results. Athletes benefit from modular goals, for example, serve percentage targets and return depth zones, rather than outcome fixation. Social support mitigates uncertainty. Cobolli's steady family base and team environment likely buffered the transition back. Confidence is then rebuilt by small wins. In his case, the ATP 250 title in Bucharest provided a discrete proof point that scaled into a Hamburg 500 and eventually into hard court legitimacy at Acapulco. Big question 3. The open question of future prospects. Cobolli is known for a clay-centric foundation with meaningful hard court improvements. The competitive landscape is of course dense. Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner are setting new baselines of pace and elasticity. Alexander Zverev and Daniil Medvedev remain formidable in baseline control. Contemporaries like Holger Rune, Sebastian Korda, Ben Shelton, and Francis Tiafoe add variability in style. Cobolli's top 10 wins indicate he can problem-solve across these styles. The operative challenges are durability, serve efficiency under pressure, and calendar management to maximize peaks at Masters and Slams. Sponsorships, such as his shift to On in 2024, can expand resources for analytics and physio, though they also introduce media obligations that require disciplined boundary setting.
What comes to mind next is versatility. He even played mixed doubles, right? Does that kind of cross-format experience matter for singles performance?
Speaking of versatility, yes. In 2026, he captured a mixed doubles title at Indian Wells with Belinda Bencic when the tournament staged a mixed doubles draw. Such outings sharpen net instincts and return patterns under different tactical constraints. While singles remains his core, these repetitions can, arguably, translate to better poaching reads and transitional footwork in singles, especially on faster courts.
Building on that, do team events matter for confidence, like the Davis Cup role he played?
Arguably they do. In 2025, with Jannik Sinner and Lorenzo Musetti unavailable, Cobolli and Matteo Berrettini led Italy to the Davis Cup title. Reports indicate the team did not drop a match in the final stages. Team pressure differs from tour pressure. Delivery there often reframes self-belief on the ATP circuit. This, then, may have contributed to the composure we observed in 2026 during his deep clay run.
I think the next thing we should talk about is longevity. Are we seeing his peak now, or is there room to grow as he moves through his mid-20s?
To frame our discussion, typical male singles peaks have historically clustered in the mid to late 20s, modulated by surface profiles and injury history. Cobolli, born in 2002, reached his first slam final at 24. This suggests additional headroom if workload and health are managed. Future research questions include the durability of top 10 status in an era of compressed margins, and the extent to which incremental serve gains, especially first serve location diversity, can move his expected value in Masters draws. If these variables trend positively, sustained top 10 to top 12 residence is plausible, with probabilistic spikes deeper at majors on clay and select hard courts.
Maybe it's just me, but the mountain image is sticking. He climbed one side on clay and then found a ridge onto hard courts. It actually makes the whole thing more intuitive.
In conclusion, the contour is clear. Cobolli transformed junior promise and challenger foundations into ATP titles, reached the French Open final in 2026, and entered the top 10 in June 2026. Along the way, he absorbed a late 2024 injury, endured an early 2025 slump, and then converted confidence through Bucharest, Hamburg, and Acapulco. Our three lenses, historical triggers, the counterfactual injury scenario, and forward-looking prospects, collectively indicate a player whose resilience and incremental improvements have real staying power. Further study should interrogate the psychological mechanisms that maintain form across surfaces and seasons, particularly under the stress of top-tier expectations.
So, I guess that kind of sums it up. Thank you, Professor. And thank you to everyone listening to another lecture. See you next time.